Welcome back to another episode of It's All Been Trick for this time. Chain of Command Part 2. You've been waiting an entire week. We did too. We waited and waited. Chain of Command Part 2. Hey, become part of the Chain of Command. Follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Trick before. So much fun. So much cool stuff going on there. Yeah, I'm saying cool, like an old guy. It is fun. There's stuff on there I laugh at a lot that I have nothing to do with. Very, very, lots of fun. And you can engage us there. Tell us what you love. Tell us what you don't love. Please don't tell us you hate something. But, if there's something you hate, you know what? Go ahead. Because, at the end of the day, you're part of the Chain of Command. And this is part of the Chain of Command. This is Chain of Command. But it's Part 2 on It's All Been Trek Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trek Before. Your regular hosts are here and still alive.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome, and despite the fact that we've been tortured by Cardassians all week, actually, we've been tortured by Kardashians because we have to hear about them, and we don't care. I'm speaking for myself now. I don't care about Kardashians. Anyway, we're here to talk of Chain of Command Part 2. First impressions.
So Picard legitimately did not know, correct? That the intel they were looking for. Thinking ahead through the episode, I mean, I think it was confirmed that he would not have known. They were looking for some sort of secret plan.
Battle plans, and he didn't know because they had assigned Jellicoe, not him.
Mm-hmm. We see him being completely forthcoming, as far as we can tell, giving up, name and rank and everything, and just like, I don't know, after that, so.
What are your first impressions of the episode?
Oh, it's all right. Moving on. Live long and prosper. Done. It was, I wish that I didn't know that the scene was coming. I will say that. But other than that, I enjoyed it. It made me wonder. We'll get into that later. We can pick through that later. I mean, it's just something about the interrogator character that I would like to know a little bit more about some of the backstory. Maybe it's just something I missed during the explanations.
Gul Madrid.
Yeah, but we can move on.
Yeah, Jimmy said last week he wanted to see a battle of wits between Picard and Gul Madrid. And I didn't. That said, as the episode went on, I actually grew to appreciate it more than I thought I would early on. Because early on, I was ready to check out. And obviously, nobody likes torture, but I definitely do not like watching it.
Some people do.
But I do think I did come around, though, as the episode went on, to Jimmy's point. It was more of a battle of wits rather than we're going to just stick it to this guy, which they did. But anyway, so I did come around and ended up liking it more than I thought I would.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a one-sided battle of wits because the power imbalance is so much.
Right.
And I appreciate that it's not two equals because that would have been a very different episode. And while I would enjoy seeing that, I also enjoyed seeing Picard at such a broken place, still trying to match wits with this guy who had all the power and the upper hand. I thought this lived up to expectation for me. There were a couple of parts where I thought it could use a bit more development that kind of floundered a little bit, but for the most part, I really enjoyed this episode and thought it lived up. And
maybe this is another positive point, which is, lots of times I hate the episodes where it's, the Empath, for example, where it's random aliens or what, you guys know, whenever aliens are testing the Enterprise, I do not care. Do not care. Whereas this is more of a, true adversaries, whatever they're trying to find out, whatever the advantage the Cardassians are trying to gain. So I think that does change the dynamic a little bit too. Still doesn't make me excited about it. And like you said, Gul Madrid has all the power, really. Yeah, I thought at the end I did come around, and you guys probably know, but I guess that the Four Lights thing is inspired by 1984.
Oh, what?
Yeah. In 1984,
brother. Yeah. Trying to force him to say something that's not true. Yeah.
Yeah, convince him that he's holding up 5 fingers when in fact he's only holding up 4. Yeah.
Right. One of my favorite books. I thought of it right away.
It's how Jimmy lives his life, is as though he is the
Big Brother.
Yes.
I'm just scared of I'm just scared because the main point of that book is how many people believe lies that they're told by their leaders, and looking around, seeing how many people voted for Trump. That number of people believe lies that they're told.
Yeah.
The majority of the Republican Party believes the last election was stolen, even though no evidence supports that theory.
Believe.
It's not a theory. It's a lie. It's just outright lies.
I think there's another argument within this episode, that also rings true of modern day America and probably the world too, but we'll get to that as we go.
Okay. Well, we start with Picard basically having been injected with the truth serum and spilling all the beans. Thank goodness he didn't know anything. Well, he knew plenty that could have hurt Starfleet, but Madrid was very focused on a certain topic, and Picard did not know that. And thank goodness he stayed focused on that topic, or Picard could have spilled a lot more. Mm-hmm. That would have hurt Starfleet. Dude, then we get a Jellicoe captain's log, rub some salt in the wounds for those people missing Picard.
I gotta tell you, I didn't like it. I didn't care for it. I mean, it made sense, but, I was like, no.
I mean, I put under alternate episode again, and again I have two, but I put again, Jellicoe stays, and we have to get used to him, and the crew has to get used to him. Yeah. I'm interested in that story as much as I love Patrick Stewart. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying, let me be clear, I think the franchise is better with Patrick Stewart in it. And especially with the films and Star Trek Picard, you don't want Jellicoe for that. But I would have really enjoyed seeing Jellicoe for a season or something, or more. Well, anyway.
If someone's going to get stripped naked, you want it to be Patrick Stewart.
Right? So the Cardassians, Gol Lemek, are telling Starfleet that Picard and his team killed 55 men, women, and children, which we know is a lie, but nobody says it's a lie. Like, even after the Gol leaves, Riker and Troy are like, is he telling the truth? And Jellicoe's like, well, yeah, they're on that mission. They don't say anything about, I'm sure they didn't murder those people. But I guess maybe that's just such a ridiculous charge, there's no need to say it's a lie.
Let me assure you guys that the Cardassian justice system has this on lockdown, because they ask him, I think Jellicoe asked, what evidence do you have? All the evidence we need. Well, case closed. I think we're done here. There's no need for you to tell us what you have.
There were 55 men, women, and children in suitcases under that desk. We saw them pulled out and murdered. Riker is set on a mission in a shuttle by himself, which seems stupid and dangerous because the Cardassians are going to see him leave. He's going into Cardassian space. Mm-hmm. Why? Why not wait for a starship at that point? It didn't seem like an urgent mission. It's like, go check this thing out in your shuttle. Yeah. Just seemed like a bad idea. Nothing came of it, but it seemed like a bad idea.
I know I'm being not a dead horse yet, but it's going to get there. Is Picard in this scene, this early scene, is this the most naked we've seen anyone on Star Trek so far? Because I think
probably.
I know Shatner.
Q.
What are little girls made of? Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Q was fully nude, and John Delancey was fully nude. Because if you remember the story in that episode, like, they kept having trouble with the thong would appear in the shot. So John Delancey just ripped it off and laid naked on the bridge. So that was a more nude bit. But yeah, I think, the shadows were tastefully done. This one was directed by Les Landau, one of our regulars. I neglected to mention last week was directed by Robert Scheer, another regular. That's why I guess we didn't discuss it, but regular directors for these two, which is good. We get more exposition to set up Deep Space Nine. We're told the Cardassians are weak, poor, and devastated by the war that caused them to the point where they're withdrawing from Bajor and the Bajoran system. Again, that is a big setup for DS9 because it's going to take place in the Bajoran system, and the Cardassians are in. It's got to be close to half the episodes of Deep Space Nine. There's Cardassians all the time in DS9. Yeah. So,
well, and that gets me to my point I alluded to earlier, which is Gul Madred essentially gives a speech about his daughter or whatever, about her growing up better or whatever. Essentially his argument, if I think I have right, is militarism is okay as long as you get to eat better, which I think has been the guiding principle of American policy since the mid 40s or mid 50s. You pick. Hey,
I'd rather pick neither, but
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, hey, that's okay as long as as long as we're all eating. But damn it, if that, as we're kind of in, but if the price of gas goes up or this or that, then, but as long as you can keep the prices low and everything else, I'm okay with spending $800 billion a year on bombing places.
American exceptionalism is yet another one of those lies they tell people, because the exceptionalism part of our country sucks. We've always been jerks. We are jerks. We need to knock it off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Just like I went on my corporate America rant last week, I would love to go on the United States arrogance and militarism rant as well. I feel just as strongly. I'm very dissatisfied with the world right now, especially as it is in our country.
I was laughing more because I was imagining you using that as a campaign speech, or someone as a candidate. We just need to knock it off.
Now we're going to see
running for office.
We're going to see how the articles about how can't even listen to Talbot Trek before these days because it's so woke.
If you made it this far, we did an episode early on, Donald Trump and Star Trek. If you made it past that.
They used to just talk about sexy women on there. Now they're talking about all this other.
Oh my God. Don't even.
Please don't go back and listen to those. No, go back and listen to the early episodes so you can see how far we've come, actually.
We've tried to be more. Yeah. We had to discuss episodes that were sexist.
We're not done.
We had more women on the podcast back then, so they were, they were able to give that counterbalance. It's a good thing, I think, that we've been more conscious without those guidelines, guardrails. We've tried to be more conscious. Although we would still love to have a female co-host join us. If you are a female Star Trek fan that would like to be a regular host on this show,
hit us up.
Drop us a line, Jim@IMDpresents.com. We'll try you out and see how you work, because we would love to add a female co-host. Or guest. But Jellicoe tells Riker to just accept that Picard is gone. And in a way that's like, well, we don't know that he's dead. Yeah, well, we should just assume it and accept it. That's too far. I'm sorry. That is too far, and that is a part of the episode that bothered me.
Yeah, I didn't like any of that exchange as much as I liked some of the Jellicoe-Riker dynamic, but I just thought Riker sounded like, he's my friend, I gotta save him, and Jellicoe just sounded like, well, not anymore, he's dead. Like, I thought the angle, and I thought Riker started to go there, was this guy is such a valuable asset to Starfleet. This is not a guy we can just leave there. I'm not talking about my friend. I'm talking about one of the most important people in our entire Federation. There's no reason to just leave him there. This is the time to make an exception. But I get where Jellicoe's coming from, because he's like, well, that's not really the mission, but I can't tell you that. But I think that would have been a better Riker argument, because Riker just came across as like, I want to save my buddy. And that's just how it came across.
Riker's like, last time he got kidnapped by the enemy, the Borg, I saved him, so I should get to do it again. I honestly think that Nechayev and Jellicoe had fully accepted that there was a real chance Picard wasn't coming back. And I think Picard accepted that too, knowing taking the mission. I think Starfleet, as far as Starfleet was concerned, they knew very well they might lose Picard, and that was an acceptable risk given the stakes. And from that perspective, that's fine. But Jellicoe should have a little bit more humanity in communicating that to the people that served under Picard. And that's where I have the issue. Like, you can be a certain style of command, but to just be a heartless jerk, that's not acceptable.
And I think later when he relieves Riker of his command, or of his duty or whatever, at that point, Jellicoe, you're just bad at your job. I mean, that's just, as far as I'm concerned.
And the relief of duty, Riker says, it's my job to tell you when I think you're wrong. Relieving him of duty is not the appropriate thing there. No. Because at that point, he is doing the duty of a first officer. Right. That is not justifiable. You can say, hey, this isn't working out. I'm going to try to find another first officer. Let's put you in for a transfer. But you don't relieve him of duty for that.
To me, this will be the sports part of the podcast. To me, that's like, I'm thinking baseball because it's that time of year. Turning to the umpire and saying, like, that's a bad call, and that's all you say, and the guy's like, you're out of here. It's like, it was that knee-jerk reaction to me. But
in corporate America, it is common for a boss to say, well, if you don't have the attitude I want, even if you're good at your job, you need to leave. But that, again, this is Starfleet. This isn't corporate America. You don't act like corporate America. Anyway.
Yeah.
Picard's being tortured before the relief of duty. Picard's being tortured, and he's told to say there are 5 lights. They torture him when he says there are only 4. Why not just say there are 5? Is like the truth serum still in his body? That was what I was thinking at first, was they want him to say there are 5 despite the truth serum. And until he can do that, but that's not, that never came into being, like they never mentioned the truth serum again. Yeah. And I think it would have been a more interesting story point just to throw away, like, hey, you're still in the truth serum. You need to, this is the truth. Making him believe that is the truth. That would have been interesting.
And I guess, that's a really good, I never even thought about that it's like he can't help but tell the truth. But
that would be the 1984 angle, is you need to believe this truth.
Right.
And if you can't overcome the truth serum to say it, then you don't believe the truth.
And I guess it's supposed to be more of a episode about torture and the dehumanizing effects of that. But I think if he does say, "Oh, I see 5 lights," sure. I think it makes it more of a cat and mouse game and more of like a death trap or whatever kind of battle of wits like we talked about earlier. Because my alternate episode is Tom and Jerry in space. Because I literally was like, "Oh, this is a cat and mouse thing," and early on, I wanted to watch Tom and Jerry instead. But again, as the episode went on, I thought I got better. It was less of really a cat and mouse. It was just more, it was still kind of a battle of wills really more than wits.
Well, the other thing about that I wanted the truth serum to be a continuing plot point is from the perspective of Picard won't say that there's 5 instead of 4. Right. Why not? You're being tortured. Who cares? Right. Just say there's 5 lights. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no reason for him to not just say there's 5 at that point.
Right. Does it really mean you cave? No.
It doesn't.
Not if you consciously are like, screw it, I'm going to tell you whatever you want to hear.
Right? I don't think that makes him less noble or less heroic at that point. That's why I really think the truth serum thing. Anyway, that's the episode I want, not the episode I got.
Well, the way the episode goes is, and the way Picard describes at the end is, I'd almost lost the will. I was looking at that as a favorable thing. I was going to tell them whatever they wanted to hear, as opposed to, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear just so we can move along with whatever we're doing here. So there is a distinction there. It's slight, but it's there.
So then we get to the scene where Jellicoe relieves Riker, and it's because Jellicoe won't admit Picard's on a mission, which would put him under I think they said the Solanus Convention, which would protect him. Mm-hmm. I don't understand that, because it's, you don't want to give in to the Cardassians' demand Golemic. You want them to give up the sector for one man. And, of course, Jellicoe's going to recommend they reject that. I agree with that. You don't negotiate with terrorists and all that. But at this point, you've been caught. There's really, I guess from a negotiating standpoint, you could still hold that back, that you're not willing to admit Picard was acting on orders because that gives you a lower hand in the negotiation. But here's the thing. You both know Picard was acting on orders at this point. The subterfuge has been blown. There's no reason to keep insisting on it. All you're doing is hurting Picard. And that, to me, was Jellicoe making a bad command decision. Did you enjoy seeing Data in red as he became first officer?
Oh, yeah. I did.
Here's my fashion note.
Fashion.
I think the red, it's certainly more striking with his white skin than the yellow. The yellow kind of washes out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like the red more, but it is more severe. It makes you feel like you're in the alternate timeline again where they're at war that Yar was from, the alternate Yar was from.
My one fashion note was Picard's romper, essentially, that he's wearing. My good friends at Fashion It So, they really liked his romper. And, of course, it shows off that chest. Got to have that chest. I liked it too. It looked comfortable. I wouldn't want to be tortured in it, but for any other purpose, I would not mind wearing that. It looked very comfortable.
I guess it's better than being naked. The naked thing was awful, but the way they had his arms, I'm surprised his arms weren't pulled out of socket. That was real rough.
Well, and I didn't think about that till later when I was reading about the episode and all the different parts of torture they went through. But it essentially did the guys at Abu Ghraib, did they just watch this episode and were like, hey, that's something to try. Oh, hey, that's something to try. Because...
where Picard had to make the human pyramid with his fellow prisoners, and that came straight from Guantanamo.
I laugh. It's not funny, but that is funny, actually. But yeah, it's
no, it is. Yeah.
While we're on the torture, I want to stay on this torture thing. So they do the incision. They put that. Do we see that scar later?
I don't know. When I saw the scar, my first thought was, oh, it's because Picard was stabbed through the chest as a young man and has the artificial heart, which they have not established in canon yet. That's an upcoming episode. And that was like, but we've seen him like on Risa with the open chest and no scar. And then when Madrid was like, no, we did that to you. I was like, oh, okay. But the thing is, the medical technology, Beverly can heal a scar and get rid of a scar. So if we never see it again, you could just assume that was taken care of in sickbay.
The Cardassians are terrible at this. But he tells them that it's imperative that he tests this pain device. I thought that was a weird little note to throw. Like, oh, I have to. I really don't want to. I mean, is that a Stockholm Syndrome device of like, is that like he's playing good cop and bad cop? I really don't want to do this, but I have to. It's my boss. If I don't do this, they're going to be on my back. I got to give you pain. It's like, wait a minute, what? No, that doesn't make any sense. So that is something that Jerry would say to Tom.
It looked like Picard really went down fast in his behavior, and I gotta assume because they didn't feed or give him water because he really wanted something to drink and they didn't give it. That's dehydration, and dehydration after like 2 days would leave you basically what he was, which was totally broken and awful. That's got to be the worst part of the torture, was the dehydration.
That was such a fun line set up, though. You must be are you thirsty? I imagine you are.
They didn't make him eat really hot wings and then ask him questions. My understanding from television is that really helps people get information out of people.
Those lights are very bright and hot. Jack Bauer would have just the worst part.
What are your plans?
The worst part was the dehydration. But the second worst part I thought was when Madrid was like, well, you could go, but then we're going to torture Beverly. And then said he already killed Worf. Like, I know all of that's lies. I'm sorry. Picard choosing to stay at that point, I think, proves his love for Beverly. Because he knows more than Beverly. He is more valuable to Starfleet. If it's purely from a duty perspective, he should leave and let them torture her. If it's purely from that command decision, now I do think he would make the same decision if it were Riker or Worf or Geordi on the line. So I'm not saying it's romantic love necessarily, but I think we see a depth of affection there that, like, this is personal and not duty.
I thought even after all the other things they'd done, this crossed a line for me.
Yeah.
I wrote down it was dirty pool, but I also wrote down this could enable the superpower, because as I think I mentioned even on this podcast, as soon as, in Marvel movies, that's the number one mistake the bad guy makes is like, I'm going to mess up your girlfriend. And then all of a sudden it's like, my Spidey superpower got even more super. You shouldn't have said that. Yeah, it's over now, buddy.
But this was much more realistic because Picard's broken. He can't do anything.
Yeah. So
I'm going to jump back here. As much as I was hating Jellicoe for relieving Riker of command, right after that is when Data figures out that Picard was targeted, and then Jellicoe figures out the rest, and we see just how competent he is and how competent the crew is, and I appreciate that moment.
Yeah.
The scene where Gul Madrid brings in his daughter is rough because Picard's worried about, like, aren't you going to think she's going to think less of you for torturing them? But he tells her, well, human parents don't love their children the way Cardassians do. And what he's essentially doing is training her to think that humans are animals, that they aren't sentient. And it's basically the thing we've done with racial stuff back in the day, is we would train our children to be like, oh, slaves are lesser, or, you don't have to think of them the same way because they're not the same as us. And I found that very disturbing.
Well, I don't think that's really fair to say. I think it's more like all other races, not just slaves.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the United States of the 1700s, there were
bleak humor there. I was doing a thing a bit with.
Oh, okay.
It's even worse than what you're saying. Yeah.
I just found it very disturbing because that's where my mind went, was the racial overtones that we've tried to do of saying some people are less than human.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was intentional. That's that comparison was supposed to come up, especially when you're militarizing a nation in that sense. All other foreign adversaries are people who are not within your village.
But I think it again gives us insight into the Cardassians as a people and what their dominant social outlooks are at this point, which again sets up a lot of Deep Space Nine because the Cardassian people and what they're going through is a key component to the ongoing story of that series.
I got to tell you, I don't like them so far.
I'm not saying that you will like them in Deep Space Nine. I think they are probably, other than possibly Klingons, the best developed species you're going to get in Star Trek because of Deep Space Nine, because they spend so much time with them. I think they're a very interesting species of adversaries, and I think we'll see the species is complex the way humanity is complex. But the current way their society is, it's a very interesting place to start of a race that's lost their war and is on the back pedal but doesn't want to admit they're on the back pedal. It's kind of like modern day Russia, where they're in poverty but they're still trying to convince you everybody else is the enemy and we have it best here and we're the dominant. That is how they're treating their people. Their people are the Russians at this point, in my opinion.
That's good. Yeah, and even at this time, 93 or whatever. While we're talking about Jill Ora, Gul Madrid's daughter.
Played by Heather Lauren Olsen.
Yeah, and I'll just say, to go back to our less woke time on this podcast, if you Google Heather Lauren Olsen, it's going to look like one of those, hey, you should look at what's happened to Jill Ora now.
The clickbait articles.
Yeah, no, it's all good. She just grew up to be a
sensationalized,
an attractive young woman. Yeah, it was more of the she's really beautiful now. And although
she stopped acting in the 90s, she only has 18 credits. She did do 240 episodes of Days of Our Lives, and then disappeared. Yeah. And I think that's all the pictures I'm seeing are from when she was on there. She was on there till she was 22, I think. So I don't know. She doesn't have any other credits after that. I guess it looks like she stayed on there till like 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, was this something that he had set up expressly for the purpose of getting to go head to head with Picard? I mean, he obviously had some personal preference there. I think that if you think it in this way, it sort of addresses some of the things you were bothering you with about the way this progressed. So it sounds like he might have lucked into it because of the situation. Their intel indicated this secret plan that is probably coming up. They're going to do this thing. They think ahead that the Enterprise is going to be called to it. We have a reason to do this finally. Okay, let's go for it. You're our best torturer. Yay! I've always wanted this challenge. I get this guy now. Finally, he's on my table. And so at first there's this mission. I'm going to do this thing. Give me the information. I don't know. Okay, well, he keeps trying to milk it a bit, but he realizes certainly after a certain point, just as Picard says, after the medicine wears off, you knew I was under the influence of this stuff. You would know when it wears off. You knew that I was telling you the truth. There's nothing I can do about it. It's like, well, I don't care about that anymore. I still want to break you. So then he brings up the four lights thing, and we're getting through this framework. And the thing about it, his daughter coming in, and we were talking about the way you're indoctrinating the youth and all the culture. We don't know for certain that this is uniformly done across all Cardassians. It could be more like their extreme right wing, political.
But they're the ones in charge right now.
Yes. Well, him in particular. I'm saying that he might be especially severe. We don't see the other Cardassians necessarily doing this, but he is presenting it as that. Yeah. Just as he was presenting it to his daughter that way.
Well, and even at the end, and this is getting way ahead, where they're basically like, we told you to get him ready, and he didn't get him ready. He was still. There's a very personalized component to what's going on. Yeah. Well, which I appreciated, and again, I think David Warner was tour de force. Great performance.
Yeah, I thought I think just like Ronnie Cox, he rode that line because, like I said early on, I'm like, oh boy, okay, what you do? But I thought he again, kind of to Keith's point, where it's like, and you guys are saying it became more of a personal thing to him, and I almost thought, Keith, you were going to say, yeah, he was like, Picard, he's on my top 5 list of people I want to torture and see if I can break him, kind of a thing. Yeah.
He's the present day Kirk for them at this point. There's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do. And that's where we come to, why didn't Picard just say, whatever, it's 5 lights, I don't care. At that point, that's not the Kirk character. He's the mythological figurehead at this point. I think it became personal to him too. You did all this stuff to me. I'm not going to let you win. So,
to me, that's the counter argument to putting Picard on this mission. I know he's the only captain or left that has that experience. But I would be like, nope, we cannot have this guy under any circumstances being tortured or whatever. He is such an important. Again, he's such an important person that we should not put this at risk. Yeah.
Well, I think that's why they manufacture something with those kinds of stakes, something that's like world-ending, planet-ending. And so if the Federation is buying this con, they think this is something that is that big a risk, and also they're convinced that they've got the jump on them. Like, surely they won't suspect these three people just kind of wandering in this little place. They're not watching. Right. They have no idea. So
kind of makes me think, without Ronnie Cox and David Warner, if these were people if these were lesser actors, and I'm going to throw John Durbin in there and play Gul
I liked him too.
He was fantastic.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Without those three actors, I shouldn't say there are other good actors that could make this work, but I'm saying if you don't have three strong actors in those three roles, I think this two-parter could easily fall flat, and I think it would not be remembered as so iconic. But I think these three performances really helped kick this up.
Meryl Streep was not available, otherwise she would have been a great Jellicoe.
She was going to be Gul Medred, actually.
She'd be great. Actually, she was going to be all three.
She was going to be the daughter. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry, all four.
So Beverly Wharf.
That's a valid point.
Back to this part of the episode.
Were there three or were there four?
There were four actors.
No, there were five actors. Sorry.
Yeah, that's true, because there were actually four, because the daughter. Anyway. Yeah.
I see
My
five.
next note in the episode is when Beverly and Worf go back on duty. And again, there's no mention made of like, we thought we were replacing you forever. Nope, you got your jobs back. When Jellicoe is talking about not rescuing Picard, the hate coming off of Beverly towards him is intense, and I loved it. Loved it so much.
She did not hide it well.
Then we get the scene where Picard essentially eats a rotten egg. That was disgusting. As that scene was happening, and Gul Medred was talking about how when he was young, he had to eat such an egg. I really was expecting him to say, and then I almost died and had to have my life saved, because at that point, if you noticed, he had not taken a bite. He just cracked open an egg for himself. And I was like, haha, I made you eat something that's going to make your torture even worse. That's not what happened, but that's what I was thinking at the time.
Yeah, I was a little, I was a little, actually a little worried for that little bit of time before he made the reveal. I was like waiting for him to say something similar, and I was glad that he confirmed that, yes, this is edible. I've eaten this before. And the point was that this is something that the lowest of the low would have to eat under certain circumstances. It's still edible, but I think it wouldn't have made much more. That made more sense than it would if he were actually trying to poison him. This is more about degrading him and still keeping him alive so that he could.
Or another alternate episode I just thought of. This isn't my other one that I had, but another alternate episode I just thought of. It's harmless to Cardassians, but it's fatal to humans, and he didn't know it. And then he accidentally kills Picard mid-torture.
I feel like
they just cut to the. Sorry.
Is that a fancy way to break an egg? Or aren't there some fancy eggs that's the way you open them, is cracking the top?
Probably.
But I'm not.
I think some people do hard-boiled eggs that way.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, when he first saw that rotten, gross stuff in it, I was like, oh, he's got a good one and gave Picard a bad one. But no, they're all that way. That's the way they're supposed to be. Picard at this point is when he talks about how torture's never worked historically, which clearly the Abu Dhabi or Guantanamo, they turned off the episode before the scene. They were like, oh, look at all these torture. We're taking notes. Okay, we're going to go torture. But then they didn't finish the episode, so they didn't know it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, I wrote down then, it's like, oh, I like the argument, like, doesn't work, and waterboarding doesn't work. And I think, generally speaking, I think that's still right? But at the end, though,
it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. It only works when it's Jack Bauer. Only on 24 does torture work.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess even at the end, the argument isn't that torture works, but that they did break. They were going to break him. He was broken.
Yeah. It was much more about the Battle of Wales than anything.
It's two different things there, I guess, because they weren't going to get the information they wanted, but they were going to break him.
And at this point, Picard gets a little bit of a one-up on Medred, because Medred calls him Picard, and Picard's like, you aren't going to call me by Picard anymore. You were just going to call me human, remember?
Right.
Yeah. So Picard gets a small victory there.
I think it's interesting that, because we've talked about some of the original series novels where the Klingons used the Mind Sifter.
Yes.
And it's interesting that, I guess it makes sense coming out of the 60s or I guess even now a 21st century perspective, that we feel like in the 23rd century and the 24th century torture, it's just going to be a different form of torture, but people are still going to be sold on this is the way to do things, which is a bummer.
There was a very weird cutaway from Picard being tortured there to then going to talk about Riker as the best pilot. I don't know, just like he was screaming and it cut weird. But then we find out Riker is the best pilot on the Enterprise, and I feel like that's been mentioned before. Though I did appreciate that Jellicoe kind of came in with his hat in hand and started making small talk and tried to butter him up. And Riker's just like, ask me, because he was kind of like turning the tables on him, but he's going to do it because Riker puts his duty first, even for a jerk.
I've been doing it. Well, that maybe answers my second question, which I'll get to. But lately, I've been doing this joke that I'm offer only. I don't audition. So unless somebody says, hey, you want to do the show, I refuse to audition, which is not true. I will audition for you. But should Riker have said yes?
Yeah. Because if he doesn't, this was a dangerous thing. If he doesn't do it, he's risking one of his crew, which he still feels responsibility for.
I guess you're right. Long term, my initial thought was, this is one of my favorite Mad Magazine cartoons or spoofs, is they did a whole thing on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and essentially they follow it through and everything. And then it gets to the last part, and Santa's like, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? And Rudolph's like, no, man, I don't work holidays. And that's the end of this. That's the end of it. So that's what I wanted Riker to do. Like, nope, I'm on break. Get out of here.
So, in the Rudolph case, he would be doing it for Santa. Riker's not doing it for Jellicoe.
You're right. If he's doing it for Picard and all that stuff, that makes sense.
And for the crew. He's going to protect the crew. He's still going to be their first officer, even if he doesn't have the title.
And he is offer only. He's like, again, ask me. All right. You know what? Sure. Yeah.
I honestly appreciated Jellicoe's maturity there, because if this were a lesser Commodore character, he'd rant and rave and order and try to cajole. But Jellicoe does go to him open, honest, lays out what he needs. Riker says, ask me, which is a little bit petty, but well-deserved in the moment. And Jellicoe doesn't, at that point, lose his temper. He just says, okay, well, you do it. And so those are the moments where I'm like, okay, Jellicoe's not a terrible captain. He has a terrible style that needs to be smoothed out, but he is a capable officer, and we saw those moments, and that made me want to see more of Jellicoe.
I thought about this today. I thought both their speeches to each other were very end of Anchorman, where it's like, Ron Burgundy, I straight up hate you, but GD, do I respect you? That's what I thought they were both saying. And he was like, all right, fine, I'll do your news broadcast, whatever. And also, he, at the end of the day, Riker would, dangerous mission, I get to be the guy? Yeah. No. When do I leave?
As we mentioned, Frank Abanda Marco wrote this episode. Mm-hmm. He, story by last week, but this week he actually wrote it. And I think he handled the characters well. I do think Jellicoe was a tad uneven, but we had that, and then the scene after that was when Jellicoe blackmails the Cardassians and basically says, yep, you need to eject your primary phaser coils or we're going to blow you up. And then he goes that extra step that you could argue he doesn't necessarily need to do, where he demands Picard be returned as well, which I don't think that was pressure of the crew. I think that was like, it's a fellow Starfleet officer, and I'm going to tell the crew they should get over it, but if I've got an opportunity to save him, I'm going to save him.
Valuable asset to Starfleet. And then while we're on Jellicoe, I love the end when he's just like, all right, well, I'm done here. It's your ship. Bye. And he's just out.
Well, they didn't do the ceremony again, which was a little disappointing. Right. Yeah. And Jellicoe's the one that says captain on the bridge when Picard walks on the bridge instead of Data, which I thought was interesting and respectful.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Although Jellicoe couldn't resist adding before he left, I think I left the ship a little bit better than I found it, which I'm like, no, dude, no, you didn't. But then he does say it's an honor serving with the crew, which is nice. But at the same time, he could not resist getting a dig in. Like, I'm the better captain.
Well, they increased something by 15% in engineering. I can't remember what it was, but I do remember that.
Okay, and he made Troy put on a uniform. Those are the things that he did that are lasting.
I have to mention this because I always have to mention this. The Cardassians give them 7 hours. Whose hours? Whose hours? You did not specify.
Bajoran hours. No, I'm kidding. Obviously not.
That's fine. Just tell me. Just tell me what they are.
We got a great shot of Gul Madrid's laptop on his desk during one of the torture scenes at the end. And I don't know if you noticed, but it was the same laptop we see in Picard's office, everything else, except it had a little Cardassian like frame around the screen. But it was clearly the same prop. They just gave it Cardassian bling.
Well, I mean, they might have the same manufacturer from a neutral system.
They must, because it was literally like the same base computer. Madrid, in his final scene with Picard, tells Picard the Enterprise has been destroyed. No one will even know Picard's here, which is so dark. And at this point, Picard doesn't know he's about to be saved. So there's no reason for Picard not to believe him in this moment.
Right.
And no wonder, as he'll admit to Troy later, that he was going to say there are 5 lights. Because at this point, how much more broken can you get? Picard was thoroughly broke. What else is there to live for? Everybody he loves dead.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason when that new guy comes in, when Lamech comes in and says, release him, go with the guards. At this point, there's no reason for Picard to believe him, because Picard's already been lied to by Madrid on multiple occasions, like saying, you know, Worf's dead, Beverly is going to be tortured. Like, Picard still doesn't know that was a lie. But there's no reason for Picard to believe that he's actually being rescued. That could just be more psychological torture.
Huh. That I mean, I remember that thought was just, it was like almost right there at the time when I was watching it. I didn't quite make it all the way there. The idea that it's possible that Picard could have thought it was a ruse as well.
Yeah.
That's the way I
the conflicting ruses, though, which is a strange. I was so focused on how much I loved that last-ditch effort from Madrid. Yeah, just that way. That, oh my God, I have to use every last second. I gotta win. I've got to do this. I'm here, pull out all the stops.
Well, and the fact that Picard later confesses that he was ready to say it.
Yeah.
Like, but then I love that because he again, he must believe that this rescue is true, which there's not a ton of reason for him to believe it. But then him screaming, "There are 4 lights!" And then he stumbles out and shoves off the help. Like, that is a man who still has his dignity and self-respect. Yeah. And that's the hero moment. That's the hero moment.
Yes. All right. I thought about it, and logically, though, it wouldn't have made sense for the ruse to overlap in that way. So, the torturer is offering him all these things. He's essentially saying, "I will keep you here and give you everything that you want. You're still going to be with me, but we're going to, it's going to be fun now. Well, I'll stop trying to hurt you if you just say this thing." And then somebody comes in, and these guys have no reason to play along in this way. They're just like straight face. It's like, what are you doing? We're supposed to do this. We're letting him go anyway. Right then, it probably all would have made sense then.
I honestly think Picard would have just been more confused in that moment. Or I would have been anyway,
maybe,
if I were in his shoes.
It's also the Bugs Bunny thing, because it's like, oh, I know I was lying all those other times to you, but this time, as long as you say 5 lights, we're good here. It's the Bugs Bunny, like, now step across this line. All right, now cross this line. It's just like, there's in theory, those goalposts could keep moving. But.
To be fair, Picard never knew he was lying. Like, there was never any moment where Picard knew Madrid and told him a lie.
Right. That's true.
Although Madrid did say, "Ain't I a stinker?" and chomped on a carrot. So, so I just said, and the hero moment was Picard yelling, "There are 4 lights," walking out. But to me, I think a hero moment was really when he comes back to the Enterprise and he takes command, and then he goes into his ready room with Troy following him and immediately starts talking to her. Because that is the anti-toxic masculinity. That is, I need help. It is her job to help me. She clearly has already read his emotions and knows he needs her, and so is there without him having to say it. But he does nothing to try to fight it. He immediately opens up to her and lets her in on his deepest stuff. And I think we didn't see it a lot, but Troy helped him recover from the Borg, and I think he really relies on here to help him recover from what the Cardassians did. And I really appreciate that display of what true masculinity should be.
Of character growth too, so
and also that little drop of "I was gonna say it," and that follow-up of "It's worse than I was gonna say it. I actually believed it."
It seemed like you guys were touching on that earlier. That would have been an interesting possibility if the goal had been to actually brainwash him in some way, as opposed to being a contest of wills. I think you were theorizing that a while back. So you could have made use of a drug like that. It's sort of like a Clockwork Orange thing. You drug him up and then do the.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be. I also thought it was kind of a callback to the Borg thing, because I feel like after the Borg thing, he didn't jump right in. I think with this, he was like, you know what, I need to get to work on this right away to make sure that I'm right here. And sorry, non-Patreon folks, I'm saying right in my brain is what I'm saying. His brain, sorry, Picard's brain.
What she means, he's gesturing at his head.
I think we see him taking the steps, and what's implied here is he's going to work through this with Troy on his own time and still go back to duty, which, it would be kind of nice if we saw the after effects, but I'm pretty sure this is like the Uhura losing your memory next week. He seems normal, which is disappointing. Which is disappointing to me. Yep. Because we get so much follow-up on the Borg, even still, like stuff we haven't seen yet of the Borg stuff is still psychologically messing with them. We don't get the same follow-up with the Cardassian torture, and I feel like we should. This is every bit as traumatic as what he went through at the Borg.
Drop in the bucket at this point.
My other alternate episode is that Beverly knows Picard sacrificed himself for her, and then that finally prompts them to take action and get it on. Like if they have breakfast the next day, like if he was surprised to see her and he's like, "Oh, I only stayed because they said they're going to torture you instead." I mean, I don't know. If this was a show that did romance, we would get some follow up on that. And unfortunately,
the weird part is that whole conversation starts with a "you up" text, and then the second or third text is, "Hey, did I mention that they wanted to get you, and I made sure that didn't happen?"
Yeah, I don't know.
Beverly comes on to him, and he's like, "I need to work on myself first. I need to get past this." On a scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was Jill Ora? She was our kid this episode.
Oh yeah, 2.
That's about where I was going. I mean,
I'm gonna say 2 as well. She buys into her father's crap a little too easily, but then wouldn't most kids?
Right.
Yeah.
That's the point of having them, isn't it?
I wanted to fill up with my thoughts. Mine is Ghoul Madrid, even though I know he's whatever. But
that seems sacrilege to me. But okay,
I know. But
I'm going to go with Jellicoe for the second week in a row. Relieving Riker of duty was a step too far, especially for the reasons he cited. It's like Ethan and I both went Jellicoe both parts. Who do you want to have a drink with this week?
Riker. I want to hear about that sweet conversation, and then get. I also want to know what he was reading in his pajamas. The fashion.
It was erotica.
It's like a girl talking to a turtle or a frog. It looks like the Princess and the Frog, or inspired that Peter Gabriel song "Kiss That Frog," which was actually not medieval, but it was maybe not Middle Ages, but maybe it's Victorian. It was old, but it was a thing that was like, "Hey, girls, it's okay to be into guy. It's okay to kiss a guy."
I was gonna say Riker overused the holodeck so much he became numb to it, so now he can only get off by reading erotica.
He can only
go backwards.
Amphibian porn is the only thing that'll get him going.
God, I didn't even see the amphibian thing, so I'm gonna have my drink with Picard. I think he needs a drink. I want to talk to him. I want to see, is he okay? Can I be his friend? Does he need a hug? What can I do to help ease his transition back into life? I don't know. I just want to give him a big hug.
I'm actually kind of torn between Picard and Madrid. That's how I need to look.
You gonna have a drink with them both during the torture scene?
Kinda.
Don't mind me.
I'd be the guy in The Princess Bride who was doing the research and kind of like, tell me honestly, how do you feel as you're.
I just watched that movie with Zoe last week.
Yeah, for both of them, kind of like, now, what do you think is happening here, and how do you think that? Yeah.
Ranking the episode, is part 2 better or worse than part 1?
Man.
I didn't think it was gonna be that hard.
I think the scene behind me kind of sums that up. I mean, the lights thing just kind of.
Yeah, I want to say David Warner kicks this up a notch over part 1, even though I really liked part 1.
So I think what I hear you guys saying is Ghoul Madrid broke you, both of you.
Yeah.
You were both gonna tell him there were 5.
I was ready to say it.
I was gonna tell him this deserves to be in 4th place, but he's making sense.
Yes, I was almost.
But no.
I was almost there.
I think this is number 1 for me.
I'll cast a dissenting vote. Maybe I'm just the contrarian. I know I'm the old man of Star Trek on this show, but I guess I'm just playing up to that part these days. But I actually like part 1 better, but I don't think there's a big gap there.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's decidedly better. I just think I liked it better.
Yeah, I think the light thing was enough to push it over the top, if nothing else.
Okay. Yeah, I think these were 2 strong episodes. I thought Relics was a strong episode. I feel like season 6 is getting its legs back under it after a few disappointing episodes. I will, just as for conversation, do you think Chain of Command as a 2-parter was better than last year's Unification 2-parter that took place about the same time as the season?
Nothing.
This is 2 episodes in a row that are 2 seasons in a row. Next Gen did a 2-parter in the fall. I do not believe they do one in season 7. Like, they still do the cliffhanger, but they don't do that additional 2-parter in the fall. I think this was better. I think they really honed in on something.
I'll live up to what I just described myself as, and I'll say Unification. I think I can tell you this. I think we all agree it's better than Time's Arrow.
Oh, my God, yeah. And I stand corrected. In early season 7, episodes 4 and 5 are another 2-parter.
Oh, all right.
So it's a little bit earlier in the season, but there is another 2-parter in the fall after the cliffhanger 2-parter. So we have two more 2-parters in Next Gen, plus the series finale, which was a 2-hour. But it was 1 week. It was 1 story, 1 week.
Episode.
We'll do it all together.
Cool.
But it is a 2-hour finale. Oh, and there's another 2-parter in season 6. Later in the season.
We got another one.
So we've got a bunch of we've got 4 2-parters.
I see 4.
It's 5. It's 5. Next week, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Episode 1, Emissary.
Oh, yeah.
What,
With
really?
the trouble, Commander Sisko, he's not a captain, he is Commander Sisko, takes command of a surrendered space station. He learns that it borders a unique, stable wormhole, which is a bit of a spoiler, but it's really like the point of the whole series. So,
Hey, we made it.
I'm so excited to watch Emissary. So excited. Not only will Picard make an appearance, but so will another Patrick Stewart Next Gen character, I won't tell you. Until then, live long.
And there are 4 lights.
5!
And prosper. 4!
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?